Linda Foster entered the kitchen holding a printed sheet, her smile tight as a wire. She slid it across the oak table toward William without a word.
$3,200, William. That's your monthly care fee for staying in our home. I'll need it by Friday.
Care fee? This was my mother's house and I had already signed it over. Yet here I was, being charged rent like a stranger.
Joseph, William's son, stared at his plate, his fork frozen midair. He did not meet his father's eyes.
It's only fair, William. We cover the mortgage, the utilities, and I'm practically your caregiver now. You won't find a better deal.
This house has been in my family for 60 years. I grew up in these rooms, and now you're billing me?
Linda tapped a manicured nail on the invoice. Joseph remained silent, his silence more wounding than any word.
Sentiment doesn't pay the property tax, William. You agreed to transfer the title. Now you're a tenant. This is the cost of staying.
I'll pay it tonight, but something about this transfer had never felt right. My mother's farmhouse wasn't supposed to come with a price tag.
That evening, William wrote the check. It wasn't surrender. It was the first step toward discovering the truth buried in the attic of the house he was fighting not to lose. The bitterness of that check had roots stretching back 3 months to a gray morning after Margaret's funeral.
William, we've been thinking. You shouldn't stay alone. Move into the farmhouse. It'll help with the taxes, too.
It sounded reasonable. The farmhouse was still in his name. Family would help. Maybe Margaret would have wanted this.
2 weeks later, at that same kitchen table, William signed over ownership of the 100-year-old farmhouse.
Just a technicality for tax planning, William. You'll still live here as family.
He sold his wife's cottage, packed one suitcase, and moved into the upstairs bedroom his mother once slept in. For 3 months, the silence held. Then came the first Sunday breakfast and the first piece of paper.
Your share of expenses. Now that we're under one roof, it's fair. I've itemized everything.
Fair. The farmhouse was his birthright. Now he was a stranger who owed rent for his own family's walls.
That first invoice was only the beginning. The payments grew, until tonight the check felt like a jailer's demand. Over the following weeks, Linda's rules tightened like a vice. She controlled the meals, the thermostat, even the hours he could use the laundry.
William, we're taking the master bedroom. It's more practical for a couple. You'll be fine in the smaller room.
He'd been sleeping in his parents' room for months. Now he was being exiled to the guest room like a boarder.
One night, passing the half-open kitchen door, William froze. Linda's voice, sharp and careless, carried through the hall.
Honestly, he's a burden. Joseph feels guilty. But I'm the one managing the finances. That old man costs us money.
Old man. Burden. She'd said it out loud. The woman who'd promised to keep the farmhouse as family.
He backed away before they saw him, his chest tight. The attic door at the end of the hall suddenly felt like the only refuge.
He needed to be somewhere Linda couldn't find him. Somewhere his mother's memory still lived.
The attic air was thick with dust and decades of silence. Old furniture, boxes, and a single steamer trunk stood in the corner. William knelt beside his mother's trunk, his hands trembling. He hadn't opened it since she died. Tonight he needed to feel close to her again. He lifted the heavy lid, hinges groaning inside. Among old linens and photographs lay a yellowed envelope tied with faded ribbon. The envelope contained 2 documents, his mother's handwritten will from 1989, and beneath it, the original deed to the farmhouse.
The deed? How could there be an original if the house was already transferred?
He scanned the faded type. The farmhouse was deeded to him outright, as his mother's only heir. No mention of any later transfer. Then he remembered the 2023 paper Linda had prepared. He dug out his phone, scrolling to a photo he'd taken of that document.
The notary section. It was blank. No witness signature, no stamp. Just a typed name and an empty space where a live person should have stood.
His heart pounded. A deed transfer without a valid notarization was legally void. The farmhouse might still be his.
All those payments, all that humiliation, and for what? A piece of paper that meant nothing.
He read the original deed again, then a third time. In the dim attic light, the truth finally settled in. He had never really lost the house. but he needed proof beyond his own eyes. He needed a lawyer, someone who could confirm what these documents meant. The next morning, William slipped out before breakfast and drove to a small law office in town, the documents hidden in his coat. Mary Callahan, a seasoned real estate attorney, listened without interrupting, then put on her glasses and examined the papers.
The 2023 transfer lacks a notary witness. No valid notary means the transfer never happened.
Never legally happened. He had been paying rent in a house that was still his.
Based on this, the transfer is void. You're still the owner.
So they charged me thousands with no right. Not a cent.
You could demand reimbursement and possession, but until you act, they won't know.
He couldn't tell them yet. Not until he had everything in order.
She gave him her card and a promise. She'd file corrective documents, but it would take time. William walked out into the morning sun, the deed in his pocket. For the first time in months, the weight on his chest began to lift. 3 days later, Mary called William back to her office. Her voice on the phone had been clipped, urgent.
William, during the title search, I found something else. Your daughter-in-law took out a home equity loan against the farmhouse, $50,000, taken out 6 weeks after you signed over the title.
50,000. While he was scrimping on groceries and paying rent, Linda had bled the house dry.
The lien clouds the title. You can't get a clean deed until it's paid, and the bank has no idea the transfer was void.
So I owe 50,000 for a loan I never took out on a house I never lost.
Technically, the debt is unenforceable against you personally, but the lien stays on the property until satisfied.
William stared at the old photo of his parents on Mary's desk. They had built this farmhouse with their own hands. Now a lien was eating it from the inside.
How long do I have before the bank tries to foreclose?
Mary gave him 6 months, maybe less. The countdown had begun, and if Linda caught wind of his discovery, she could accelerate everything. William withdrew his entire retirement savings, $50,000 the next morning. He walked the certified check to the bank's lien department and cleared the debt before lunch. That evening, Linda's voice cut through the living room as he came through the door.
I saw the bank alert. You withdrew $50,000. What did you buy?
An old medical debt from Margaret's treatment. I didn't want to be a burden.
You had that kind of cash, and you've been griping about a care fee?
He offered no further explanation. Later, he hid the original deed inside his old carpenter's toolbox in the garage. The next day, he rented a safety deposit box at a downtown bank and locked the deed, the will, and Mary's notes inside. The lien was gone, the title was clearing, but Linda now watched his every move with fresh suspicion. The dynamic had changed. He was no longer just a renter. He was a man reclaiming his home. William kept his phone ready, voice recorder one tap away. Every time Linda cornered him, he pressed record. 2 days later, he caught her mid-sentence, the phone hidden in his palm.
Joseph forgets this old man is on borrowed time. Once the house is fully ours, William can go to a facility.
The recording was clear. She'd confessed. Now he had the evidence.
That night, he practiced his speech in the mirror, voice low and steady.
When this is over, you'll leave this house and never come back.
William, the corrective title has been filed. The official deed will arrive by mail next week.
The house would be his again, just days away.
But Linda's suspicion deepened. He found his dresser drawer open one evening. He checked the mail every morning now, waiting for the envelope that would seal his victory. On the 5th morning, the envelope arrived, thick, official, with the county seal embossed on the corner. He tore it open in the driveway, the corrected title, his name alone, clear of any lien. William's hands shook. He read the words sole owner 3 times, as if they might vanish.
The farmhouse was finally his again. No rent, no care fees, no lies.
He carried the deed inside, already planning the Sunday breakfast. A week from now, Linda would know. But that afternoon, a process server walked up the gravel path with a thick legal envelope.
What is this?
The petition alleged he was mentally incompetent to manage his affairs. Linda's signature was on the 2nd page.
She was trying to strip him of everything, not just the house, but his very voice.
The Sunday plan would have to wait. He called Mary, the corrected title now also a shield he hadn't expected to need.
William, a mental evaluation is required. I've arranged it for Thursday.
At the clinic, the psychiatrist asked about dates, finances, and his living situation. William answered every question correctly.
He felt stripped bare, a man proving his sanity. But he'd endure it for the house.
Mary gathered affidavits from his former contractor and a neighbor who'd watched him manage a loan for years.
The evaluation clears you completely. No cognitive impairment. The petition has no medical basis.
They rehearsed his testimony, Mary firing sharp questions, William answering without faltering.
He remembered Linda's voice on the recording, her cold dismissal. He'd use it if he had to.
The corrected title itself is damning. It proves the earlier transfer was void, devastating evidence.
The night before the hearing, William sat at the kitchen table with the deed and the petition, unable to sleep. At dawn, he dressed in his best shirt. Mary would meet him at the courthouse. The fight was about to begin. The courtroom was small, wooden benches half empty. Judge Morrison presided, and Linda sat rigid at the petitioner's table.
William, do you manage your own finances, medication, and daily activities without assistance?
I've done so for 40 years. I paid off a house lien 2 weeks ago out of my own savings.
And on that property, does the county recognize you as sole owner now?
Yes, the corrected title is in my name. The transfer Linda arranged was void.
Mary then turned to Linda, voice hardening. She produced the loan documents and the blank notary section.
Mrs. Foster, you signed that notary line yourself, didn't you? No, notary was present.
This is harassment. He's confused. I was only helping.
The judge's gavel fell. The petition is dismissed. Mr. Foster is fully competent. William walked out of the courthouse into the noon sun. The victory was clean, but the real battle remained at home. William returned to the farmhouse, the dismissed petition still crisp in his hand. Linda and Joseph sat in the living room, waiting.
Next Sunday, we're having breakfast together. Just the three of us. We need to discuss the future.
The future? After that circus you put us through in court?
One meal, Linda. I think you owe me that much.
Joseph's hand hovered over the armrest, then fell. He offered no objection. Linda's glare made sure of that. That night, William stood before the mirror, the corrected title on the dresser. He recited the words one last time.
Your care services are no longer required. You have 30 days to vacate.
He set out 3 plates on the kitchen table, the folder with the title resting in the center.
By this time tomorrow, the truth would be undeniable. The house would be his, no matter the cost.
Sunday morning arrived gray and cold. The smell of coffee filled the kitchen as footsteps approached. William didn't touch his coffee. He waited until Linda took her first bite, then opened the folder and slid the corrected title across the table.
What is this? This says you own the house. That's impossible.
That's the corrected deed. The transfer you arranged 2 years ago was void. No notary, no witness. This house never left my name.
Linda's face drained of color. She stared at the county seal, her manicured nail bending against the paper.
Your care services are no longer required. You have 30 days to vacate my home.
You can't do this. We'll fight you. Joseph, say something.
Joseph's fork clattered onto his plate. He stared at the document, then at his father, mouth open but silent.
I paid off $50,000 of your debt to clear the title. Your petition was dismissed. There's nothing left to fight.
The corrected title lay on the table between them, the official seal catching the gray morning light. Linda shoved her chair back, the sound sharp as a slap. The breakfast was over, but the aftermath had only begun. Linda's screech cut through the kitchen. "I'll tie you up in court for years, old man." William tapped his phone, and Linda's own voice filled the room. Once the house is fully ours, William can go to a facility.
You said that? About my father?
She took out a $50,000 loan against this house. I had to pay it off from my own savings.
He's confused. It was for tax planning.
Joseph's hand hovered toward his wife, then pulled back as if burned.
I can't let her go alone. I'm sorry, Dad.
Then you've made your choice. I'll hold you to the 30 days.
Linda seized Joseph's arm and pulled him toward the back door. Joseph looked back once, his eyes brimming, before the door closed behind them. Over the next 3 days, the farmhouse filled with the sounds of drawers opening and boxes being taped shut. William stood at the upstairs window, watching Linda direct the movers with clipped gestures. Joseph carried his old desk alone, refusing help. His face held no fight, only exhaustion.
This was the price of reclaiming a house. The family broke before the door did.
By Saturday, the moving truck's engine rumbled in the gravel. Linda supervised the last load without a glance back at the house. Joseph paused at the passenger door, one hand on the frame. His eyes lifted to the second-story window.
His son paused. That was all. No wave. No final word. Then he climbed in and the door shut.
The truck pulled away. The dust settled on the empty driveway, leaving only tire tracks and a few forgotten leaves. William walked through the downstairs rooms. The kitchen table where Linda had slid the first invoice waited bare. The house was his entirely now. The silence felt both like victory and an open wound. He bought 2 gallons of cream-colored paint and spread a drop cloth over the floorboards. Then he stood in the center of the room looking at the walls. The old floral wallpaper came away in long, damp strips. Each tier uncovered a layer of plaster that had held the house for a century. The brush rolled over the faded floral pattern his mother had chosen 40 years ago. With each stroke, the past retreated.
This room had held his mother's last breath. Now he was erasing the sickness, not her memory.
He worked steadily as the sun climbed. The cream color grew across the walls like a second skin. By late afternoon, the room was transformed. Golden light poured through the old window, catching dust motes and fresh paint. He placed his mother's photograph on the windowsill. The glass reflected the new walls.
She would have approved. He could almost hear her voice.
The room no longer smelled of dust and grief. It smelled of paint and morning air. The bedroom was his now. The house was his. And for the first time in years, sleep came without dread. 12 years passed over the farmhouse like slow, quiet weather. William turned 81, his hands still steady, his days peaceful. He often sat on the porch, watching the fields change color. The house held no ghosts now, only wood and memory.
He'd kept the farmhouse, but one day he'd be gone. Who would keep it then?
A week later, he sat across from Mary Callahan, the lawyer who had once filed the corrective title.
William, you want to leave the farmhouse to the county trade school?
Yes. Let it teach young hands what mine once knew. Carpentry built this house. It should build future workers too.
Mary drafted the will. With a steady hand, William signed, the farmhouse would become a woodworking workshop. Afterward, he lingered over the old photo of his parents in front of the farmhouse, the same image that had stared back during the lien crisis.
They would understand. The house would outlast him, but its purpose would change, and that was a kind of legacy too.
He walked out into the autumn twilight, the will tucked in his coat. One chapter closing, another already written. 6 months after William's quiet passing, Mary Callahan read his will in the same office where they'd first met.
The property shall be conveyed to the county trade school for use as a woodworking workshop, free of any lien or claim.
By autumn, the farmhouse had been retrofitted. The kitchen where Linda once slid an invoice became a tool library. Young men and women hunched over workbenches, sawdust curling under their hands. An instructor demonstrated a dovetail joint, voice carrying over the hum of lathes. The house echoed with learning. In what had been the living room, students sanded chair legs. Not one of them knew the battle that had saved these walls. A bronze plaque appeared by the front door. Foster Woodworking Workshop, in memory of a carpenter who reclaimed more than timber. The original deed was framed inside the workshop, hung beside a black and white photo of the farmhouse from 1923. Each year, new graduates left with calloused hands and a diploma. The farmhouse never fell silent again. The house that Linda had tried to steal had become a gift that outlived her cruelty. The attic trunk now sat beneath a window, a brass plaque marking the spot where truth was found. Students climbed the steep attic stairs to read. Here, truth was uncovered. The trunk remained, a quiet memorial. In the hall, the framed original deed drew every eye. Apprentices heard the story of a man who reclaimed his home. At the diner, old-timers told how William paid $50,000 to clear a lien. They spoke his name with respect. Joseph died estranged, his father's title on his wall. He'd never visited the workshop. Linda challenged the will twice. Mary played the recording and the corrected deed. The court dismissed her claim. After that, Linda's name became a warning. Don't pull a Linda Foster. The farmhouse outlasted them all. Each spring, new students arrived, their toolboxes clanking. The county added a wing, but original walls stood. The deed remained, yellowed and permanent. One autumn, a young woman traced her lineage to the deed and enrolled. The legacy continued. The farmhouse bore more than the weight of snow. It carried one man's quiet resistance against erasure. William didn't fight for revenge. He fought for what was already his, and that gritty dignity became his legacy. The deed was proof that truth, dug from an attic trunk, could bend steel and outlast greed. The notice he gave Linda wasn't cruelty. It was the boundary that restored his home and his soul. Second chances are never clean. His cost him a son, but furnished a future for 100 young hands. Linda's name became a cautionary whisper. The Foster name became a plaque that students read every morning. The attic trunk still sits there, a testament that the key to tomorrow might be hidden in yesterday's dust. What began with an invoice for $3,200 ended in a gift worth generations of carpenters. The house that once demanded rent now demands nothing but dedication. It finally became the home he envisioned. And so the story endures not of a house reclaimed, but of a life restored, and a lesson passed through every chisel and measurement. Morning light fell across 24 workbenches. The old farmhouse hummed with the sound of sandpaper and chisels. A young apprentice ran her hand over the grain of a chestnut board, her instructor nodding beside her. On the wall above them, the yellow deed caught the light. Its creases were as deep as the home's foundation. In the corner, a student carved a joint so tight it needed no glue. That used to be William's room. The kitchen where the first invoice had been slid across the table was now a finishing room, smelling of linseed oil. Outside, the wooden sign swayed in the breeze. Foster Woodworking Workshop. The name said it all. Students carried finished chairs out to a pickup, their laughter echoing off the same porch where William once rocked. At dusk, the last student swept the floor. Sawdust fell like snow on the old pine boards. The deed on the wall was the last thing to catch the setting sun. Its ink was still black, its promise unbroken. The farmhouse that had been a battleground was now a sanctuary of craft, a place where no one was ever charged rent again. Evening light poured over the old farmhouse, the workshop windows darkening one by one. The rocking chair on the porch sat still, facing the fields, as if waiting for a man who no longer needed to sit. The wooden sign swung gently, the carved letters Foster holding the last warmth of the day. Inside, the framed deed on the wall caught the final ray, its ink still dark after all those years. The house that had been a battlefield was now a harbor. No rent, no threats, only the scent of cedar and effort. Generations would walk these floors, each plank holding the echo of a carpenter's last stand. William had reclaimed more than a deed. He reclaimed the future for a trade that builds homes, not walls, but homes. As dusk settled, the farmhouse stood not as a monument to one man, but as a promise to every student who crossed its threshold. And in the quiet, the name Foster lived on, not in ink, but in every saw cut, every chisel line, every project completed within those walls. The farmhouse that had charged rent was finally home.